Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom lakam, which is peace unto you all. Hi, Rab Tawab la'atam, za'ach yakam yawam on Rachagadol, Charlotte, which is good evening. This is your brother Yawam from the JMS camp in Charlotte. Nachamatam kaya, hamalakath hashamayim kwa Rab, repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Call halayim la la abanawa Yahweh bahasham Yahweh shai, bahasham rachak wadashwa mashana. Laza Kwanimina Wamalakim, Sharachagadol, which is all praises to our Father Yahweh, which means he exists. Bahasham, in the name Yahweh Shai, delivers in double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. This is an article on NPR.org, and it says the Postal Service may be out of cash in 2027 without Congress help. Postmaster says, it says, if it continues business as usual, the U.S. Post Service is on track to run out of cash for paying its workers, vendors in about a year and may have to stop deliveries, Postmaster General David Steiner told lawmakers this week. The warning is the latest development in long-standing money troubles at USPS, a unique federal government agency that relies on stamps and service fees, not tax dollars, to deliver mail and packages 6 days a week to every address in the country. And as things are starting to spiral out, pretty much, or as prophecy continues to unfold, all right, things popping off around the world, i.e., things with the Strait of Hormuz. I believe it was like 20 to 30% of the world that ultimately ran off of the supplies and the fuel and stuff like that came out of the Strait of Hormuz. All right. A lot of businesses and, a lot of things are having a domino effect. All right. What I mean by that is, all right, so a lot of people in America, Babylon the Great, all right, indirectly rely on that fuel in the Strait of Hormuz. All right. Also, another example, all right, a lot of these businesses shutting down, fast food, which fast food is not good for you. All right. But just going to the point that, everything in America, Babylon the Great, how this place was ultimately, how it was running. All right, things are indirectly affecting each other. All right, so being that the U.S. Postal Service is going to run out of money, which it'll probably be sooner than that. You know how Esau gets down. He likes to work with a right hand of falsehood. All right, but nevertheless, a lot of things are ultimately having that domino effect. All right, and one of those things that's being affected is the U.S. Postal Service, and a lot of places ultimately rely on things from the U.S. Postal Service. So if they're not running, how if business isn't going as usual, all right, things like checks. Some people don't get checks, which we in the digital age, so to speak. So generally people get paid through the bank, but certain things would be delivered in the mail, via the mail, so that's like an important aspect of Babylon's infrastructure. All right, but it says, I am not sure that the American public is aware that the Postal Service is at a critical juncture. I know that, reading it again, it says, I am not sure that the American public is aware that the Postal Service is at a critical juncture in which, it says, I am not sure that the American public is aware. Yeah, so for the most part, all right, most people are continuing business as usual. All right, people are into their daily lives. All right, people are trying to, see how they're going to make their next buck, how they're going to get their next meal. All right, what's going to be the next form of entertainment. But a lot of stuff is continuing to unfold. All right, so it's going to catch a lot of people off guard. All right, especially 2/3 of Jake. All right, so it says, I know that I wasn't aware of the extent of it before I took on this role, but at our current run rate, and if we continue to pay our required obligations in the same manner as we have done in recent years, then we will be out of cash in less than 12 months. Steiner, who joined USPS last July, said in a written statement released ahead of a House Oversight Subcommittee hearing on Tuesday. And pretty much the point, that I want to get out of this article is that, the Lord ultimately is touching the infrastructure of America, Babylon the Great. All right, from the idols. All right, from the things that are ultimately set up, from the things that made this place so-called great. All right, a lot of those things are ultimately, being touched. All right, and this place is going back, to its natural estate. All right, because this place is ran by the basis of men, you know. So let's get a couple precepts. Let's get Psalms chapter 97. Well, actually, I'm going to get this first. Isaiah 47 and verse 1. And it says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground, there is no throne." All right. In which this place takes on the ways of ancient Babylon, all right, which went into, the land of confusion, So this place is the land of confusion. Babylon, Babal, goes into confusion, all right, from the politics to the ways of life, all right, to what's pushing in society, all right, to the infrastructure. Everything about this place is ultimately confusion. So it says, "O virgin daughter of Babylon, sit on the ground, there is no throne." It's no throne. The Lord is taking away the eminence, all right, that America, Babylon the Great once had. It says, "O daughter of the Chaldeans," all right, because this place takes on, all the customs and witchcraft and sorcery and things of that nature. It says, "For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate." All right, and this was the place at one time to be, all right, where, all the heathen wanted to come over here and do business and things of that nature, but a lot of people, even, the so-called Americans are, starting to hate this place, all right, from, you know, Esau Edom is hating, living in his own country, all right, and then you got, 2/3 of Jake, they're in love with captivity, but they're still at odds, with how things are being ran in America, Babylon the Great. If it was to their liking, they would want to stay in captivity if it was going to be how it once was, being in that spirit of, when Jake was coming up out of Egypt. All right, Jake was longing for how it was in Egypt, ancient Egypt. Just like in these times, Jake is looking back, at the early 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, and so on and so forth. But that's not coming back, all right, because the Lord is ultimately bringing down this place, all right, and rightfully so. So it says, it says, "O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate." All right, it's not being called tender and delicate, because the inception, all right, and what this place ultimately is made of is being revealed. All right, verse 2, it says, "Take the millstones and grind meal, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers." Reading it again. Verse 2, "Take the millstones and grind meal, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yet thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man." So the Lord ultimately is exposing the very foundation of America, Babylon the Great, and that goes into, that shameful spewing. All right. So let's get a couple more. We'll get Exodus chapter 8, and we'll get let me see, Exodus chapter 8 and verse 16. And it says, "And the Lord said unto Moses, say unto Aaron, stretch out thy rod and smite the dust of the land, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And they did so. So Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in man and in beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice upon man and upon beast. Then the magician said unto Pharaoh, This is the finger of the Most High. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said." Now let me get this in the NLT. And it says, "This is the finger of the Most High." Hold on. All right, so yeah, reading it again in NLT. "This is the finger of the Most High. The magicians exclaimed to Pharaoh, but Pharaoh's heart remained hard. He would not listen to them, just as the Lord had predicted." So as for the judgments that the Lord had sent at that time, they was comparing the judgments, to the finger of the Most High, because the Lord has, his whole hand, so when the Lord works judgments throughout the earth, all right, it's done by his hand, because the hand ultimately moves. It's what ultimately works and creates things. So what they were saying was that was just a small sliver of what the Lord wanted to show at that moment. All right. So let's get this as well. Let's get Second Esdras chapter, second Esdras. Give me a second. Second Esdras chapter 15, and we'll get verse 11. All right. And it says, I started give me a second. Yeah, verse 11. All right. Second Esdras 15 and 10. It says, Behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt. All right, in which, America is present day Egypt. All right, Egypt 2.0. It's also Babylon the Great. It's also Assyria. It's also likened unto America is pretty much likened unto the captivity. All right, the different captivities that we ultimately was enslaved in. All right, America has, Esau did his research and he pretty much combined all these different captivities into one in America. All right, that's why it's known as Babylon. All right, but Second Esdras 15 and verse 10, it says, Behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt, but I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm and smite Egypt with plagues as before and will destroy all the land thereof. And what do you smite? What you smite with your hand, so the Lord ultimately is, he smote ancient Egypt with the different plagues that he had sent, in those times. All right, just like he's smiting present day Egypt. All right, and this is what Klaus Schwab had called the polycrises. You gotta, everybody's going through some type of economic crisis right now. All right, from the infrastructure of the governmental agencies, USPS. All right, funding with different groups, like i.e. Just different governmental agencies. They're running out of funds. So again, to mention the USPS, you got jobs cutting positions because they ain't got funding. Amazon let off different people or a lot of people. You got the fast food restaurants today, they cutting jobs, applying for bankruptcy and things of that nature. So everybody is going through some type of turmoil, and that's pretty much what made America Babylon the Great, was the economy. All right, this place is known as Atlanta traffic. All right, traffic goes back to some type of merchandise. All right, things that you can make money on. All right, and the Lord has a sense of humor. So the Lord has a sense of humor. So it's ironic that the Lord is touching the economy. All right, so that pretty much goes into the plagues. All right, some of the plagues that the Lord ultimately is sending. Which it's not just limited to those. All right, it's just that's just the plagues that are most prevalent. Currently, the economics. America is being plagued economically. All right, socio-politically. All right, from the division amongst the people. All right, so let's get that real fast. Let's get Isaiah chapter 19, and we'll get verse 1. And it says, The burden of Egypt. Behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. All right, the burden of Egypt. All right, the burden. All right, goes into a load. This word for burden, it says mash'ah, and it says load, burden. It says that which is carried, brought or born. It says an utterance, oracle. All right, it says chiefly a doom. All right, so it's a doom. All right, upon this place. All right, so it says the burden of Egypt. Behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence. And the Lord Yahweh is dispatching his son Yahweh Shai to ride upon that father's ship. All right, in which he's going to destroy, the hegemonies of Esau, Edom. All right, and specifically, America, Babylon the Great. All right, as the nukes is hitting various different hegemonies of Esau, Edom. All right, in America, Babylon the Great, the Lord Yahweh Shai is going to be, zapping, 2/3 in the heathen. All right, in different various parts of the earth. All right, but it says, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, in which the idols are being ultimately moved from the money, all right, to the melting pot, because that melting pot is also it goes into an idol as well. Like that mindset of everybody, being as one, everybody going along to get along, that's being done away with, That's because that goes into an idol. It says, "In the idols of Egypt should be moved at his presence." The money is an idol. All right, people would confide in their jobs. all right, confide in their money, all right, cars. People confided in their cars, people's cars was idols, and the Lord got it to where now, the car market is shit, all right, used cars are super expensive, all right, and the new cars that they super expensive, whereas you would have got a car back in the day for like 20,000, a new car, now they like 30, 40, 50,000 into the hundred thousands, so the Lord ultimately is removing the things that people confided in. All right, let's get another precept. Let's get Psalms chapter 97. All right, and we'll get verse 7, and it says, "Confounded be all they that serve graven images, that boast themselves of idols. Worship him, all ye powers." So this word for confound goes into to be confused, to be put to shame. So people are ultimately confused and being put to shame. Because they put their trust. All right, and specifically Jake put their trust. All right, into these different alternate ways of life. All right, and when the rubber meets the road, when prophecy gets to rolling, Jake don't got nothing to ask for protection. All right, and Jake is looking very confused and looking very really looking foolish. So going back to Isaiah the 19th chapter, and we'll get verse 1 in the latter. It says, "And the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it." So that American dream, all right, it's dissolved, because that word for melt goes into dissolve. It's vanishing. It's no more American dream. People trying to survive. People just barely trying to make it. It was an article, not too long ago. It went into people basically making delicacy, pretty much cheap delicacy type food. Something called water pie. People going back to eating canned beans, stuff like that. Because that American dream is no longer. All right, people are just trying to survive. All right, verse 2, it says, "And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, city against city and kingdom against kingdom." So going into those social pretty much those in the same, that social cohesion that was in America, Babylon the Great, that's being done away with. All right, it says, "And the spirit of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it." Excuse me, "And the spirit of Egypt shall melt in and the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst of it." All right, "And I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they shall seek to the idols and to the charmers and to them that have familiar spirits and to the wizards." All right, so the spirit goes back into the mind of the what kept this place going. All right, let me get this word for spirit. It says rocha. All right, and it says the mind. So what gave this place life? All right, what gave this place pretty much how this place was able to keep going. All right, and one of those things, part of that was the economy. All right, the traffic. All right, the merchandise. How America pretty much was able to be part of it. How it was able to be great. All right, went into the lies and the deception. You see, but then also the money. All right, the Lord ultimately is touching the economy. All right, and it says, "And I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they shall seek to the idols and to the charmers and to them that have familiar spirits and to the wizards." All right, and one of those ways that's being done is by way of the entertainment industry. Esau Edom ultimately understands that if he can keep people distracted, they won't notice that this place is ultimately on the decline. All right, but we through the spirit, we can see that this place is ultimately on its way out. All right, but pretty much is going to the point that Esau Edom is using the left hand to see what he can do to ultimately extend his rulership. All right, verse 4 says, "And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord of hosts. And the water shall fail from the sea, and the river shall be wasted and dried up, and they shall turn the rivers far away, and the brooks of defense shall be empty and dried up. The reeds and flags shall wither, the paper reeds by the brooks, by the mouth of the brooks, and everything sown by the brooks shall wither, be driven away and be no more. The fishers also shall mourn, and they that cast angle into the brook shall lament, and they that spread nets upon the waters shall languish. Moreover, they that work and find flax, and they that weave network shall be confounded, and they shall be broken, and the purposes thereof, all that make sluices and ponds for fish. Which, you know, reading down from verse 5, what really made ancient Egypt great, all right? A lot of the economy was fueled by the Nile River. All right, so reading down from verse 5 to 10, that pretty much goes into the economy. So the Lord ultimately is touching, just as ancient Egypt had an economy. All right, America, Babylon the Great is likened unto Egypt. You see, so the Lord ultimately has touched the economy of America, Babylon the Great, to where they ain't really, making money like they once was. Going back into how we got Isaiah, the 47th chapter, and the first verse, the Lord ultimately is, bringing this place down, and it's starting, or it's continuing, by way of, the Lord touching the infrastructure and bringing the plagues, all right, as he touched ancient Egypt, So just wanted to go into that. Adonai Tazaza Banaya Pa, Lord's will. That was a beautiful edification through the Spirit. Wa Adonai Tazah Atam Yashlai Latawab, Lord's will. You have a good night. Wa Shalom Lakam, which is peace unto you all. Shalom, shalom.